Good afternoon. I'm sure you do not expect me to make another budget speech. I think it's important to read the budget speech along with the economic survey, especially the first chapter of the survey. Yesterday, the Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Rajan, briefed the media on the economic survey, and many of you must have been present here. The economy is indeed challenged. Challenged in a number of ways. The economic survey lists the challenges, lays out various options before the government. What the budget does is pick on some of those options and say, this is the way we will go forward. But as I said in the last couple of paragraphs of my budget speech, our work does not stop here. The budget is simply one event in a series of events, in a series of actions that have to be taken. Besides, the budget speech can't run beyond an hour and 45 minutes or maximum of 2 hours. There are many things that I would have liked to say, but I could not say because of lack of time. These are issues that we have either addressed or in the process of addressing. And after the debate takes place in Parliament, when I reply to the debate, another set of measures will be announced. Another set of decisions will be announced. Similarly, when the finance bill is taken up for discussion, and when the finance bill debate takes place and I speak on that debate, another set of decisions will be announced and another set of measures will be announced. So it's not a one-stage or a one-stop exercise where you come before Parliament and make the announcements and then say, let's meet again next year. It's not, let's meet again next year. We will meet again in Parliament, of course, when another set of measures and decisions will be announced when I reply to the debate, and then again we will meet when the finance bill is taken up. So in that sense, I would urge you to read the economic survey and the budget speech. Secondly, contrary to very spirited debate that took place in the media, which I enjoyed, I must say, we have not come up with any great surprises to either put impossible burdens on any section of the people or to spook any section of the investors or any section of the market. And I've explained why. The economic space was rather restricted. Given the restricted economic space, there is no scope for largesse. At the same time, there is no scope for imposing huge burdens on anyone. That's why I said it is a time for prudence, restraint, and patience. I think after 3 words, the most important one is patience. There may be many things that I would have liked to have done, but one must be patient and wait for the appropriate time. And I think the wheel will turn once the investment cycle begins. So one must be patient when the economy is challenged. One must wait for the wheel to turn. And once the wheel turns, then we have a lot more freedom to take action. The main thrust of the budget is to signal to the world and to everyone else that we are following a fiscally prudent path, that the fiscal deficit will be contained. If the fiscal deficit is contained, other deficits will be contained in due course. And I think we have demonstrated our capability to contain the fiscal deficit at 5.2, which is below the mark that I set for myself, 5.3, and for the next year at 4.8. The current account deficit is a little more tricky. Current account deficit cannot be contained by simply compressing expenditure or raising revenues. Current account deficit can be contained only if we are able to export more, or we are able to import less, or we are able to do both. In the short run, importing less is not a very viable option. If we need oil, we have to import oil. If we need edible oil, we have to import edible oil. If we need pulses, we have to import pulses. Sometimes we import even things we do not need, for example, gold. But then there is the passion among our people to import gold. And even if I say we don't need gold, don't import it, very few people are going to listen to me. Therefore, in the short run, it is not easy to reduce imports. In the medium term, yes, some of these imports can be reduced. For example, if we increase production of coal, then we can reduce the import of coal. If we increase production of oil seeds, then we can reduce the import of edible oils. In the medium to long run, the only way to contain the current account deficit is to improve exports. If our exports grow at the same rate as our imports are growing, or faster than our imports are growing, then we can pay for our imports. Then the current account deficit becomes manageable. I've already told the Cabinet as well as the Minister for Commerce that we will fully support measures that he will announce by the 31st of March when he amends the foreign trade policy. We will fully support all measures that will give a boost to exports. So if I have not said too much about exports, it is because I await the amendments to the foreign trade policy. But once those amendments are made, both he and I will come and meet you and explain that we are both on the same page as far as supporting measures to boost exports. Then, of course, there is a question of inflation. I've explained why and how inflation takes place. Monetary policy can only do so much to contain inflation. Fiscal policy must go hand in hand with monetary policy. We can't put the entire burden of taming inflation on monetary policy. Fiscal policy must do its part, which is why we are containing the fiscal deficit. I'm confident that the Monetary Policy Authority will also do its part, consistent with its mandate to tame inflation. It will also address issues of growth. I think 2013-14 will be a better year than 2012-13 in terms of growth, in terms of inflation control, in terms of investment. It will be a better year. In fact, the Chief Economic Advisor and his team have predicted that GDP will grow over 6%. He has given you a band, 6.1 to 6.7. I may add that the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council has also predicted growth next year will be over 6%. So once growth moves over 6%, that is a sure sign that the economy is on the way to recovery. And then the year after, that is 2014-15, we must aim to move growth beyond 7%. So the immediate goal is to move to a growth rate above 6%, then to a growth rate above 7%. Now, I've also explained in the budget, what does growth mean? Growth is not an end in itself. Growth will mean something only if it brings relief and material relief to the people. Education to those who have no access to education, healthcare to those who have no access to healthcare, skills to anyone who wants to acquire a skill, jobs to those who are unemployed, security to those who feel insecure. So growth can mean something only if it translates into something which is material. In fact, someone said, God to a hungry man is in the form of food. So growth must be something material, which is why we emphasize human development indicators. Revenues that we generate, the efficiencies that we bring to the system must mean something to the people. And I hope next year it will mean a little more than this year, that there will be more access to education, more access to healthcare, more access to food, more sense of security. That is the test of good governance, and I'm sure that my colleagues in the government who are in charge of ministries and departments will surely do their bit to deliver the outcomes in respect of the outlays that I have presented in the budget. So these few words, the floor is now open to questions.
Thank you, sir. In keeping with the spirit of the budget, the first questions will go to a woman journalist. Woman journalist, please.
Oh.
So let me begin by asking you that the expenditure, while over the B it is 29% higher, over the RE it's only 11% higher. We'd seen a similar thing in 2012 when the fiscal deficit was 4.6% and expenditure wasn't budgeted, and then the fiscal deficit was crossed and it was 5.3. Tax buoyancy also you assume 19%, whereas growth is expected to be moderate. So how credible do you think the fiscal deficit plan is, considering that food subsidies only at 90,000 crores, just 5,000 crores over the RE, and also oil subsidies are way less than what the RE was?
I think the numbers are credible. We have worked on the numbers for the last couple of months. You have looked at the numbers over the last couple of hours. Therefore, the numbers are absolutely credible. The fuel subsidy bill is likely to be smaller because we are correcting diesel prices. We have capped LPG prices, subsidies at 9 cylinders. Therefore, there is every reason to believe that fuel subsidy will be lower this year. On the food subsidy also, we have made our calculations, and the normal food subsidy is expected to be about 80,000. And over and above that, for the Food Security Act, I've provided 10,000. But if the Food Security Act requires more money, we will certainly provide more money. But that is a question that has to be addressed after the Food Security Act is passed. I don't have a bill before me, so I can't really say what it will cost. Once the bill is in Parliament, it is passed in Parliament, we can do our sums again. But as I speak to you, I think we have made a correct assessment of the subsidy bills. As far as tax revenues are concerned, in the current year, when the economy is growing at, say, 5%, first half grew at 5.4, second half, let's assume the CSOs turns out to be right and it's 5%, still the tax revenues are growing at about 16.7%. So next year, if the economy grows between 6.1 and 6.7, there's no reason to assume that tax revenues will grow at a lower rate. In fact, it will grow at more than 16.7. And we have assumed only 18. Now, where does the extra 1 come? The extra 1 comes by the additional resource mobilization. We have stated up front that on the direct taxes and indirect taxes side, we will get about 18,000 crore of additional resource mobilization. So if you add the normal growth rate plus the ARM, it makes up for the 19% growth rate in the tax revenues.
Yes, Supriya.
Sir,
Supriya,
Your budget has been lauded by Economist in India Inc., but markets haven't lapped it up, and this is perhaps unprecedented because your budgets are supposed to be market friendly. I think the one big concern is the tax residency certificate, and most people believe that the government needs to give more clarification on that. That is not enough as far as avoidance of tax is concerned. Would you want to soothe and frayed nerves now?
I assume that you are referring to Section 90 capital A. Now in Section 90 capital A, now this may have become like a classroom. So let's try to keep it in very simple language. Section 90 capital A is two parts. One that deals with GAR, subsection 2. That's not relevant for the present because GAR itself will come only on 1/4/2016. The other part of Section 90 capital A is subsection 4, which is already there, and the explanation that has been added. Now the explanation last year was in the memorandum. What has been done is bring the memorandum into the Act. So nothing more has been done. It's possible that the memorandum and the new explanation are worded in a manner that there is a certain ambiguity. It's possible. But let me clarify that ambiguity. All that it is intended to say is DTA, this has nothing to do with Mauritius or any particular country. This has got to do with double taxation avoidance agreements. All double taxation avoidance agreements have two conditions. One is the condition of residency. The other is a condition that the person must be the beneficial owner. These are two separate conditions. For example, in the case of interest income and dividend income, he must be a resident and he must also be the beneficial owner to claim the benefit of. In the case of royalty, he must be a resident and he must be a beneficial owner to claim the benefit of the treaty. In some treaties, beneficial ownership is attached even to other forms of income. So, either one or both conditions will apply to interest, dividend and royalty. All that the section is intended to say is, if you produce a tax residency certificate, mark my words, if you produce a tax residency certificate, that is a complete answer to your status as a resident. But whether you're the beneficial owner is a separate issue. Am I making myself clear? A tax residency certificate only certifies that you're a resident. It does not certify you're a beneficial owner. So whether you're a beneficial owner is a separate condition you'll have to satisfy. That is the purpose of the section. But if the section has certain ambiguity, we can always clarify that.
Do you think the foreign investors were perhaps expecting a more friendly approach after GAR last year, and which is why they're disappointed?
What is the friendly approach? I did not write the treaty. The treaties are written over a period of time by different administrations. The treaties also follow a model. The treaty consists of two conditions, a condition of residency, a condition of beneficial ownership. As far as residency is concerned, we will accept the certificate of residency that he produces from that country. As far as beneficial ownership is concerned, that is a question of fact, maybe a mixed question of fact and law. So, we are not doing anything unfriendly to the foreign investor. Since you have to satisfy two conditions, you satisfy the first condition by producing the certificate of residency. You have to still satisfy the second condition where the second condition applies.
Yes, Siddharth, please.
Sir, since you have sort of not done a hike in excise or service tax, did you consider it, and is there a possibility of a mid-course correction in the next fiscal year? Also, your assumption for the spectrum auction yields, is it on the higher side considering the response and the feedback from industry so far? Thank you.
Well, I don't know what you mean by mid-course correction. Are you suggesting that I increase the excise duty or decrease the excise duty? I mean, I can't predict what mid-course corrections will take place. I can't predict that. But by definition, a mid-course correction can either be an increase or a decrease. So it's difficult to say anything at the moment. At the moment, we are keeping it at the standard rate. Now, as far as spectrum yields are concerned, yes, we have taken note of the fact that this year the spectrum auctions did not yield the amount that was originally assessed. Last year they thought spectrum auctions will give you 40,000 crore, but they've actually given us a very paltry amount of a little over 1,000 crore. But for next year, we have got a written statement from the Department of Telecom, which divides the spectrum revenues into license fees, revenue sharing, and the one-time fee. And the quantity of spectrum that they will auction. It's after they have given us in writing how the cash will flow, we have taken this amount into account. But if there are any unexpected developments, we'll have to factor them later. But the spectrum will be auctioned. It may not be auctioned in the second round, but sometime or other the spectrum has to be auctioned. And if a serious telecom player wants to remain in the Indian market, he must acquire spectrum. He cannot remain in the Indian market without acquiring spectrum. So for the present, there is a lot of uncertainty about the auction, but I'm sure this uncertainty will be resolved and the spectrum will be auctioned. So if the spectrum is auctioned, we should get the money.
Sir, in your budget speak, you spoke about GST legislation, constitutional amendment bill, but there is no roadmap in terms of a deadline for GST, and the same is for DTC. So do you have a timeline in mind for these two tax reforms? And secondly, there is no clarity on retrospective amendment with regard to Section 9, which affects companies like Vodafone. Investors were expecting that budget will provide some clarity in terms of favor of interest and penalty. Are you looking at providing clarity through a circular outside budget?
On DTC, we have set a deadline for ourselves. If you read the speech carefully, you will find that I have said that I hope to be able to bring back the DTC bill to the Parliament by the end of the budget session. So there is indeed a deadline for the DTC. We are working on the DTC. We will bring back the bill to Parliament. As far as GST is concerned, I cannot lay down any deadline. It depends on the state finance ministers. I have gone by their minutes. What I have said in the speech is a faithful reflection of the minutes of the last meeting sent to me by Shri Sushil Modi, the chairman of that group and the finance minister of Bihar. So I've said, yes, I accept your minutes. The minutes talk about a constitution amendment. They talk about a GST model law. And they talk about compensation. Now I said, I accept your minutes. And to show my commitment to the GST, I have also set aside 9,000 crore rupees as the balance of the first installment. So now the ball is in the court of the state finance ministers. I hope to be able to meet them shortly, as soon as they finish their budget work, and then let's take it forward. But if they are willing to take one step forward, we are willing to take one step forward. We are ready and willing. And if we can forge a consensus, we should have a GST constitution amendment draft and a GST bill draft in a few months. There's no reason why GST should be delayed. And I have shown our commitment by putting aside solid money to show that we are committed to pay the compensation, provided we have the other things in place. What's the other question? You see, we cannot discuss case-specific matters. The amendments that were introduced by my predecessor may have arisen as a result of a judgment of a court in order to clarify an earlier law of Parliament. But Parliament made that amendment. Parliament said, our earlier law meant this. The court has taken a different view. We are restoring the original meaning. So that is how that case was sought to be settled. But the case was not settled. When we issued a reminder to Vodafone about the tax liability, they have replied by saying they don't owe the government anything and they would like to take us to arbitration. Since then, of course, we've had